This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
If you're a seeker, don't miss the inspiring book Shamanic Awakening, Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Cochran's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers throughout the Americas. Sandy's initiations across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt, combined with her knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth, influence her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private readings, sacred international journeys, a meditative CD, and her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate your earth walk and create a deeper connection to yourself. Find this and more at her website, starwalkervisions.com.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here is the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
And good evening. I am joined tonight by a friend of mine, Nick Redfern, whom I've known for a number of years, and he seems to have followed me into Texas, meaning I lived in Texas a long time ago, and now he lives there. He has written a book called Secret Societies, The Complete Guide to Histories, Rites, and Rituals, which is due out in March, and I happen to have a copy sitting on my desk, and apparently Nick does not have a copy, so I went up on him there. I have a long introduction, and I'm not sure that people really need an introduction to Nick because he's been everywhere in the last few weeks on the radio and television. But I will tell you that he's worked as a freelance feature writer for the Daily Express, People, Western Daily Press, and Express and Star newspapers, as well as a full-time feature writer for Planet on Sunday. He has been a freelance journalist for the British newsstand magazines, The Weekender, Animals, Pet Reptile, Military Illustrated, I Spy, The Unopened Files, and The X Factor. This Animals sounds like something the Monty Python would have done.
Actually,
yes.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Go
It
ahead.
was actually an old English magazine for children where you would buy it in stores and it would build up into like volumes. You know, you'd buy them each week and put them in like volume folders.
I'm going to skip over some of this because I think everybody knows you're on the lecture circuit. You've been seen on television programs like Monster Quest, UFO Hunters. I'm impressed with the National Geographic channels, Paranormal, and the Syfy channels, Proof Positive. But what I liked was you've been identified as a member of an informal group of friends, often called others as the Paranormal Rat Pack and the Cabal. And other members of the group are filmmaker Paul Kimball and authors Greg Bishop and the late Mac Tonius, which is too bad. Mac was a good guy. And in 2012, he took on the role of an on-air radio talk show host. Well, there you go. Nobody's done that recently. And a paranormal themed internet radio show, Epic Voyages Radio, produced by the Inception Radio Network. Nick Redfern, welcome to A Different Perspective.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, Kevin. Although I have to just sort of burst bubbles, if that's the right word, but I think that whole Rat Pack Cabal thing was created as a joke, because I was actually told about it rather than actually knowing I was even a part of it. And I don't think I've actually seen Paul for probably 8 or 9 years now, something like that. And Greg I see about once a year, and of course Matt unfortunately died. But I guess you can really only be a Rat Pack if you actually hang out and do things together, which.
But you can hang out together online now and Skype
true.
and all that sort of thing. And I haven't seen Paul Kimball in a long time, and I know he's been involved in a couple of these ad hoc UFO investigations. Most recently, he was part of the Roswell Slides research group, which helped de-blur the placard and kind of send that whole thing crashing down in a matter of minutes. So, it's kind of the thing that's been going on for a long time. We have those sorts of things. I mentioned secret societies, which is not going to be available to the general public for a couple of months yet, but it's a long book that deals with an awful lot of information about, histories, rites, and rituals. I mean, secret organizations from, I guess, the Masons. You talk about the Kennedy assassination. You talk about whether Hitler survived the war and that sort of thing. So I was just wondering if there was anything that you'd like to add to that. I mean, were there some parts of this that really excited you? So we'll talk a little bit about what's in secret societies. And like I was kind of saying before, did you have a part that excited you?
Well, yeah, one of the stranger parts of the book revolves around a British UFO secret society, if you like, known as APEN, or the Aerial Phenomena Inquiry Network. And they surfaced under mysterious circumstances in the UK in the early to mid-1970s. And they sort of portrayed themselves as a sort of clandestine UFO research group that was going to try and get to the heart of the mystery. But they didn't want their identities known, and they would send out these strange, sort of couched, unsigned letters to various people in ufology looking for help and information on latest cases.
Nick, I'm going to have to cut you off there because we're up against our break, and we will be back to talk about APEN in just a minute. And you can take a look at Nick Redfern's site at nickredfernfortean.blogspot.com. And you can get usually more information about what I have to say at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And as I say, we will return in just a couple of minutes with Nick Redfern talking about his book on secret societies, and we'll talk about UFOs, and we'll talk about whether Hitler actually survived the war, and if those ideas of searching for him in today's environment are worth anything. So please stick around.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere, Florida. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine such as hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining rooms can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you visit, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic downtown Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
We are back with Nick Redfern. I cut him off when he was talking about Apron, which is a British secretive UFO group. And you want to continue with that? Tell us a little. They sent out a letter to UFO researchers. They wanted to stay in the background. And did they get anywhere with their research, or have they kind of disappeared?
Well, this is sort of a really interesting and weird story, because what happened was not only did Apron send out these sort of anonymous letters to numerous people in ufology in the early 70s, people who were sort of, really at the forefront, people like Jenny Randles back then. And they, as I said, they essentially were presenting themselves as a group that wanted to stay in the background and investigate significant cases and essentially get involved with everyone in ufology. Now, things got a little bit disturbing, because as well as sending out letters, they sent out cassettes, audio cassettes, playing, like, for example, Nazi, the type of music the Nazis played during the Second World War when Adolf Hitler was on parade and things like this. And they clearly had some sort of extreme right-wing agenda. Now, the more that people looked into it, the more they came to two possible scenarios. One was that they actually were some sort of ultra-right-wing group that was trying to infiltrate ufology and in essence sort of recruit people to their right-wing agenda by pulling them out of the UFO field. In other words, it was like a strange form of recruitment, if you like. The other theory, which is an interesting one, is that APAN was actually sort of a shadowy group established by some element of the British government or the intelligence community that was trying to disrupt British ufology by pitting people against each other and trying to smear the subject by suggesting it was sort of linked with ultra-right-wingers and Nazis. And a number of UFO researchers of that era came to believe that this group was some sort of like a secret society within government whose role and whose mandate was to disrupt British ufology. And they still surface very occasionally to this day, but they're most prominent in the 1970s. And they also popped up in relation to the Rendlesham Forest case in 1980. So, but every time they surfaced, it was essentially to sort of sow the seeds of sort of discourse and, disrupt the various groups that existed at the time.
Well, from what you're saying, it seems to me that they are supposedly like the alleged MJ-12 in this country, which, of course, we have no documentation for. But from what you say, there's actually documentation. This group existed and that they were kind of manipulating things behind the scene. I mean, it's not like MJ-12 where we got a lot of documents that have no provenance, but you've got some documents here that do have that sort of thing, have a provenance.
Well,
you know where they came from.
Have documents. Yeah, there's no doubt that, researchers who, for example, were attached to the British UFO Research Association, BUFORA, in the 70s, they were recipients of letters from Unopened. As I said, Jenny Randle's was. They sent out these bizarre cassettes playing Nazi music. So in other words, somebody was doing this, and a number of these letters and communications came from all around the country. So, it wasn't just from one little town, say, in the north of England or anything like that. So whoever it was, they had a large network of people. But Jenny Randle herself said that she was in no doubt that one of the primary results of Unopened's work, if that's the right word to use, was to try and destabilize and fracture British ufology. And, of course, the big question is, why would they do that? And was there some sort of official agenda, or was it a private agenda? We don't really have the answers beyond the fact that whatever this sort of secret group was, they did exist to perform some sort of specific task.
Were there any names attached to it?
Well, there were, but it was generally sort of just bizarre names like General Smith or Colonel Jones. It was kind of like that thing. There was never anything where anything could be really tracked down, and there were never any sort of real names or addresses given. In England, you don't sort of have to put your own address on the front of the envelope. You can just mail a letter with the recipient's name and address on. So sometimes it can be very hard to sort of, determine who's sending you mail, really. So.
But unlike MJ12, which had a list of government officials on the first document, I mean, honest to God, real officials who unfortunately were all dead by the time the MJ12 document surfaced, but you had no list of names like that they didn't sign it, Lord Mountbatten, for example.
No, it was sort of far more sort of covert and hidden. And it was almost as if it was just sort of playing with people's minds, just the fact that people all across the UK in ufology were getting anonymous letters of a quite disturbing nature. And, when you sort of look at it from that perspective, I think sort of perhaps psychologically destabilizing some of the people. It may have been, sort of a little bit of a, sort of quieter character. You can understand how they might have sort of been intimidated by this. And some actually did leave ufology because they found the whole thing sort of quite disturbing, rather than standing up against them and saying, stop sending me letters or whatever. So it was a very strange story, and sort of a very little known one of this sort of hidden group in British ufology.
Does it relate to Men in Black at all?
I've been asked that question before, and I think it does, in the sense that the whole angle of intimidation is clearly present in both phenomena, Unopened and the Men in Black. Now, of course, the big question is, do you have sort of multiple groups and multiple agendas that some might be of a similar nature? I think that's probably more the case. I don't think there was sort of, you could trace Unopened back to like an agency in the US or something like that. I think this was definitely something British-based, and sort of, psychologically profiling some of the people in ufology, and, doing certain things that cause them to be sort of fearful for the research they're doing. A lot of thought had gone into this. It wasn't, sort of the classic case of some spotty teenager just having a few laughs and jokes. So if you read the letters and all the communications, it was sort of psychologically created to sort of make it look like they were trying to help British ufology, when in reality, destabilizing it, breaking it up, and just sort of pitting different researchers against each other were the primary goals.
So there's no evidence that it linked back into the government at all?
No, there isn't. But the one reason why certain researchers thought that was the case was because Unopened didn't sort of focus on lights in the sky or even abductions or contact cases. There weren't many abductions back then in the UK, but certainly there were sort of contact-type cases. They didn't really focus on those. They focused on cases involving the military and the government, and in many cases, they tried to play down the importance of these cases. That's, they popped up, as I said, in relation to Rendlesham and alluded to the idea that, it may have been something more down to earth than, a UFO. So in that sense, if they were somehow tied to the government or to the military or military intelligence, then you might have an explanation as to why they would suddenly jump up every time, a significant military case occurred and actually got out into ufology, that somebody sort of spilled the beans, so to speak. So I find that interesting, that they didn't just surface or hardly ever surface in relation to regular UFO cases. It was always when there was a little bit of controversy that might sort of be traced back to, the official world.
Well, you say military cases, and they would pop up with their important military cases. Did they pop up when the Ministry of Defense started releasing their UFO files into the public arena?
Excuse me. They actually didn't, but in one or two of their communications, they did allude to having in their possession certain government and military files on UFOs that weren't in the public domain. And they kind of talked about those in almost like a taunting fashion, sort of we know something you don't know, that kind of scenario. Now, whether that, again, was true or whether it was designed to sort of reel people in, because, people in ufology, they love sort of stories of government files and hidden files. And so whether or not they actually had the real files or not, I think there was possibly a plan to use the scenario of, hey, we've got these files as a means to sort of have these people, have the researchers fall even more under the fold of APEN and under the sway of APEN, just by sort of dangling the carrot, so to speak.
Do they still exist? Have they surfaced any time in the last, say, 5 years or something?
I've not heard anything in the last 5 years, but I actually wrote briefly about APEN in an earlier book in 2006 called On the Trail of the Saucer Spies, and I sort of addressed all these different theories in there. And I actually got a phone call probably about a month or two after the book came out, so this would have been, I think, sort of late 2006, and I got a phone call like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and from somebody with an English accent, which unfortunately, it just came up on the ID as like private caller or unknown call or something like that. And it was somebody screaming down the phone, basically saying words to the effect of, how dare you smear the words of APEN and so on, and do you know what's going to happen to you, that kind of thing. And, I'm not the sort of person who sort of, runs quivering in the corner to something like that. So I basically, I won't use the words that I used on the phone, but you can get an idea of my response. But, whether that was some sort of hoax or somebody just joking around or somebody still in APEN, I don't know, but they took the time to sort of find my phone number here in the US, which was not, online, and they were clearly speaking in an English accent. It was actually like a Southern England, Southwest accent. I knew exactly this part of the country where the accent was. And, it was a sort of a demonstration, if you like, that, yes, APEN may still be around and still up to their tricks sort of now and again.
Well, it seems to me that if you're living in Texas, you should have informed them of that and explained to them that the mindset of Texans, which is everybody's got a rifle rack in the back of their pickup truck, and you're all heavily armed. And anytime you feel froggy, just take a leap, that kind of thing.
Well, that's right. I basically told them what to go and do, and they hung up after that. And I think that kind of reflects their approach. If you stand up to them, as I did, and just basically told them what to go and do, then, and I never heard from them again. I do know for sure that some people in ufology who were clear in the 70s, I was just a kid back then, so I wasn't involved then, but, following up years later, I do know of a number of researchers who got very, not just concerned, but downright terrified by all this,
Nick, we're going to have
actually...
Nick, we're going to have to take a quick break here once again. The time just flies by. I can't believe it. You can take a look for Nick Redfern at nickredfernfortean.blogspot.com. And when we come back, I'm going to try to shift the conversation and move a little bit to the idea which is in his book about Hitler being still alive. So we will return right after this, so please stick around.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
we have returned with Nick Redfern, and we were talking about Apron and his response to them, suggesting that he wasn't frightened by them, and they haven't bothered him since. But one of the things that struck me as you were talking about Apron is they were sending you Nazi-type music and that sort of thing. And in your book, Secret Societies, you have a short segment about whether or not Adolf Hitler survived the Second World War, survived the fall of Berlin in 1945 and escaped to South America. And I was just wondering, did you have any specific evidence that that is true, or how exactly did you come to include this in the book? I suppose is the best way to mention it, other than to say, does Odessa mean anything when we get to talking about that? But if we can go into that in a moment. So anyway, tell me about the Hitler section of the book.
Well, the reason I included that, although it deals with sort of secret societies and so on, it also sort of focuses on what we might call cabals and things like this. So the theme was, although it was, did Hitler survive the war, it also revolved around, sort of secret cabals involved in getting Hitler out of Germany and, surviving the war and being sent to or getting over to South America and so on. Now, the reason why I included this in the book, we've heard a lot of these stories for a long time that Hitler survived the war and, lived on under an alias in South America. But why I chose to talk about it was because, as I'm sure you know, just a few years ago, back in 2011, the FBI created its latest website, The Vault, where you can find literally hundreds of thousands of pages, maybe millions, I don't know, of formally classified files on all different subjects, UFOs, Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, or you name it. If the FBI investigated it, a lot of those files are now online at its website, The Vault. And one of the files is titled Adolf Hitler. And if you read that file, what it actually is, it's not sort of a historical file, like a biographical file on Hitler or anything like that. The entire file is devoted to letters and communications and rumors that reached the FBI that Hitler had survived the war and made his way to South America. So, in other words, although, the theory that Hitler did survive the war is an extremely controversial one, and for many people it's a highly unlikely one. But what I found particularly fascinating wasn't just the theory that Hitler could have survived the war, but the fact that the FBI was secretly collating numerous data on all these rumors and stories and trying to figure out what the truth was behind them. So, that's what sort of fascinated me more, was this sort of ongoing program to sort of research, did this cabal exist? Did some secret group of post-war Nazis get Hitler out of Germany and to South America? Just the mere fact that the file was opened to specifically investigate that was something that sort of intrigued me.
Well, there were two things that sprung to my mind as you were talking about that. One, as I mentioned earlier, was Odessa, and that was I believe, an organization run by the SS at the end of the war, which the whole purpose was to get high-ranking Nazis and loyal Nazis out of Germany and into South America or other places where they could make a life for themselves. So there was an organization that did that, and we know that it was successful because it got guys into like Mengele and Eichmann into South America. And the other thing that struck me was we get an awful lot of things like that, but of famous people or notorious people surviving their deaths. Davy Crockett supposedly didn't get killed at the Alamo. He was captured and taken to Mexico. Jesse James really wasn't assassinated by Ford. He escaped into somewhere else. Butch Cassidy lived for years and years after his supposed death in South America. So, it's that kind of thing. But I can see where after the war there was no Hitler body that could be found. And so that would be a logical conclusion. Did he survive? And you have people telling you that, we saw him here, or he did this, or here's a picture of him in Brazil or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about Odessa. That's one of the reasons why there was this sort of ongoing collection of data every time another rumor surfaced about Hitler, because although it was never proved that Hitler survived the war, you're right, it was proved that there was this program to, get high-ranking Nazis out of Germany and out of Europe completely as well. So, it was almost like one of those where there's smoke, there's fire scenarios, or there could be fire. And so for that reason, it was perceived as being plausible. And you're correct when you say that, there are a lot of controversies surrounding Hitler's final days and final hours, and whether or not, his burned corpse was found, or was it really him, or was it a look-alike? So I think as long as these theories sort of stay open, the questions are always going to be asked, whether it's by researchers, the general public, or with this file, by the FBI as well.
I remember seeing a program not too long ago, and that's why I kind of focused on this Hitler thing. It might have been in the last week or so, about Hitler surviving the war. And one of the things they'd done, and I don't know the name of the street that's near the Brandenburg Gate, but they had cleared that in the final days of the war so that they could, so it was sort of like a big long runway, and they cut down the lampposts so they could fly aircraft in and out. So the idea was they were preparing this so they could take Hitler out of Germany as the Russians finally kind of overwhelmed everything. Did you run into anything about that, or anything that might add to that?
Well, not that specific one, but I mean, one of the things I found interesting about this particular file that I talk about in the book is that some of the accounts were extremely detailed. It wasn't just along the lines of, I met a guy in a bar who told me Hitler was, taken out of the country, and I can't remember the guy's name. It was not like that. It was talking about specific submarines and specific places in South America where Hitler was dropped off, and then where he made his way to, a little town and so forth, and some of the people who were reportedly involved and how the process went ahead. And there was a great deal of sort of communication between the FBI and the State Departments, various State Departments, offices and embassies in South America to try and figure out if there was anything to this. So, then that was purely and simply because a lot of the accounts that came through were highly detailed. That was one of the things that sort of motivated the FBI.
So we've decided Hitler probably didn't survive the war. I mean, is that the conclusion you kind of came to?
Yeah, I think, he probably didn't. But it's like a lot of these different stories, whether it's Jack the Ripper or even Roswell, that we know something happened, and maybe this happened, maybe that happened. And so things are always sort of a little bit still wide open. And I think that's the same with the Hitler stories, that the door will never be closed until we know for sure. And when you have sort of intriguing stories that do have a little bit of merit to them and, background data, then it's inevitable that, it's never really going to go away.
Well, it seems to me that once the Soviet Union collapsed, there was a search for remains of Hitler, and that the Soviets had collected some bone fragments near the big bunker there where Hitler spent his last 10 days or so. And I remember they were talking about some DNA testing from relatives of Hitler, and I'm not sure if I was a relative of Hitler, I'd be mentioning that to anybody. But they were going to run some DNA tests, and I haven't heard anything about whether those tests were positive or negative or anything like that. And I kind of wondered if maybe you'd heard something in the last few months, since you've kind of got an interest in this.
Yeah, not really. There's been no sort of major development or anything definitive, really. It's all sort of a wait and see, and if it even will go any further, it's kind of hit like a brick wall, really. But I mean, when the FBI posted its file, this prompted a great deal of interest, and I think probably prompted a number of TV shows and documentaries that surfaced in the wake of the uploading of the file to the Vault website. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if further data it does surface, I think it probably will. But whether or not it'll actually resolve things or just make things even more confusing, kind of the latter scenario is the one that usually, is the one that sort of plays out.
Yeah, that's kind of the bad thing about UFO research and this kind of research in general. Even when you have a definitive answer, there are people who are going to say, no, that's not true, that the CIA got to the witness or somebody bought him off or something like that. You just cannot, even if you have a definitive answer, there are going to be people who just simply do not accept it.
Yeah, and I think ufology, is often guilty of that because there's that sort of Fox Mulder, I want to believe mentality sort of takes over. Sometimes, not deliberately, just unconsciously, subconsciously, people want their favorite cases to be this and they want it to be that. And if you suggest something else, it's like, well, why are you doing it? What's your agenda? Well, there's no agenda. You're just looking for evidence of this or that. And, it's...
Well, it's hard to explain to people. Yeah, it's hard to explain to people that sometimes the evidence doesn't take you where you want it to go. It takes you somewhere else. And I think as a researcher or an investigator or a writer, you're obligated to explore that path and say, this is what I found. This is a great case, but here are the problems with it, and here's why we are no longer so excited about it, because here's what the evidence tells us, or the lack of evidence tells us. I'm sure you've
actually, what that does, that demonstrates, being truthful and being unbiased and open to wherever the evidence goes. It's kind of like, people would be amazed, if you watch the same TV shows when you were 10 as you do at 30 or something. Of course, you're not going to watch kids shows, on a Saturday morning when you're 35 or whatever. And I think, but in ufology, it's almost like you have to be locked down into one mindset and you're not allowed to change. It's like she's the abduction researcher, he does cattle mutilations and thinks it's biological warfare. The other guy thinks it's aliens. And it's almost like an 11th commandment, thou shalt not change thy scenarios or ideas, That's how it kind of comes across. And I've never really understood that mindset of why, if you supported one theory when you were 25, if you uncover new material when you're 35 and it takes you down a different path, well, there's nothing wrong with that. You're actually being honest in saying, hey, my views have changed.
I think the thing that I've discovered or I've seen is that you suddenly get labeled as a flip-flopper, and you are required, if you want to be invited to lectures, if you wanted people to buy your books, you have got to embrace all of ufology. You cannot say this part doesn't simply work, this part makes a little bit of sense to me. You have to embrace the whole thing. We're going to have to take our last break here. When we come back, I'd kind of like to talk to you about your Federal Emergency Management Agency section of the book, where you're talking about the secret camps and all of that sort of thing. And if you want more information, you can take a look at nickredfernfortean.blogspot.com, and I often comment about our programs at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, so you can get a little bit of a different perspective about what we may have discussed during the program. We will return with Nick Redfern and maybe talk a little bit about FEMA right after this.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? I'm Dr. Kimberly McGeorge, and on The Secret to Everything, we will merge the practical with open investigation into all realms of the mysterious. We will talk to cutting-edge alternative health practitioners, those who inspire and motivate you in business and life, and of course, we will share stories of the paranormal, conspiracy, and cryptozoology. You will transform because of the frequency I carry, the frequencies my guests carry. Life may never be the same after you listen to this program, for the secret to everything is for you, the listener, for those who desire more in every area of their lives and believe that it can still be found. Listen and discover thesecrettoeverything.com.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
I have returned with Nick Redfern, our guest tonight, on A Different Perspective. And we've been talking about Secret Societies, which is his book coming out in March. And we've been talking about some other things as well that is very interesting. And I think we've finished with Adolf Hitler for a while. And because of that, I wanted to ask Nick about one of the things that he had mentioned in the book. Is he's got a segment on FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I noticed that you were talking about these camps that are secretly being constructed and that sort of. Can you give me a little bit of background about that?
Yeah, well, as you said, FEMA, which was established in 78 and functional by 79, is a Federal Emergency Management Agency, and it provides sort of massive relief and support in relation to sort of large-scale disasters in and across the United States. You know, does a lot of very good work. But within the sort of darker side of conspiracy theorizing, there are these theories and whispers and rumors that FEMA has sort of another agenda, a secret agenda, which involves the creation of what have become known as FEMA camps. The theory being that at some point in the near future, martial law might be declared, and any sort of people viewed as dissenters and people who ask awkward questions will be sort of rounded up into these camps. Now,
wait. Let me make one point clear. This all did not evolve in the last week. After President Trump took the oath of office, this is something that has been discussed for literally years. It's not something that's new. So we don't want.
Right.
We don't want to go down that path. We just want to make it clear that this is something is very, very old.
Oh yeah, this goes back certainly a couple of decades, and personally, I'm extremely skeptical of this. I'm not saying that FEMA hasn't plans for creating what you might call camps, but not to sort of hold people in detention situations, but actually just for people whose homes may have been destroyed by tornadoes or earthquakes or, God forbid, terrorist attacks, that kind of thing. The problem I have with the theory about the FEMA camps and detention camps and concentration camps is that the theories and the rumours have been going on for decades, a couple of decades now, and yet nobody's successfully got a photograph of one of these disturbing camps, with people in sort of black outfits wandering around, in goose-stepping style or whatever. That nobody's ever proved that. It's all still very much at the rumour mill level. And I think there's a good reason for that, and that is because certain figures in the conspiracy research field have sort of made the leap that the existence of plans to be put into place in emergency situations are part and parcel of a plan, like a New World Order type plan to, annex the U.S. and round up everybody who's ever dared say anything about anybody, in government. I don't personally see that happening, but I included the chapter to demonstrate that the section in the book to demonstrate that there actually is a significant number of people in conspiracy research who actively do promote the idea that there are so-called FEMA camps, and they are sort of the closest thing you could imagine to, like a concentration camp. But as I said, I've personally seen no evidence at all of that.
Well, as we're talking here, it strikes me that I keep bringing up things that are pretty far off the wall and probably untrue, which makes it sound like the book is just filled with these kind of wild speculations, which is not. That in itself is not true. For example, you have a chapter on the Masons, and this is a real secret society that has existed for literally hundreds of years and have been pointed at as kind of running wild in the formation of the United States. I think that there's a story coming out that Santa Anna made some kind of secret Masonic symbol after he was captured at San Jacinto during the Texas War for Independence, and that was why Sam Houston let him go. So there are an awful lot of things in the book that are true secret societies and true histories of that sort of thing. Is there something that struck you that really kind of excited you that was a true history, something that we can demonstrate as being true?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want readers to think it like you said, that it's just, rumours and hearsay. No, what I've done is to hopefully take a very balanced look at secret societies and demystify the rumours and the legends surrounding them from the fact, and figure out what is fact and what is rumour and what is maybe somewhere in between, like with the Unopened group. Was it a government agency? Was it somebody within ufology? But one of the things that does intrigue me, which, is a verifiable thing and also sort of gets into the issue of secret societies and rites and rituals, relates to the story of Jack Parsons, the famous rocket pioneer, who basically, was responsible, not completely single-handedly, but, for leading to the formation or the creation of the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California. Now, Parsons was somebody who was not only a brilliant rocket scientist, but also an occultist who actually ran one of Aleister Crowley's lodges out in Pasadena, California. in the 1930s and 40s. And so, we had this man who was at the forefront of military rocket research, but also engaged and involved with occult rituals, occult secret societies, and things like this. And what's particularly intriguing is that every Halloween, the staff at the JPL wheel out, these mannequins of Parsons and some of his colleagues, and they hold they pay homage to Parsons in this sort of kind of slightly bizarre ritualistic event on Halloween. So, there's nothing particularly sinister about it, but it is kind of unusual in the same frame, so to speak.
And well, you can say that about an awful lot of the secret societies, I think, that you talk about in the book. They're really pretty benign. They just are kind of couched in secrecy and maybe have nothing sinister going on. It's just a way of having fun one day a week or one day a month.
Well, I'm certain that comes into to a degree. And I think there's also the idea that for the people in the groups, it creates a sense of they have power that the rest of us don't have, even if it's just, some sort of local group of retired businessmen or something, There's always that atmosphere of, a secret society. That means they're manipulating things and they're powerful. It may actually be the opposite, that they've got low self-esteem and putting themselves in that position actually makes them feel good,
Well, the one group that you don't mention in the book is the stonecutters.
Well, it was one of these things where the publisher said, we need 200 entries on as many secret societies as possible. I said, well, if you want 200 entries, I'm limited to 200. So, something had to go or something had to be left out.
But you understand the Stonecutters was the organization on The Simpsons, and they were running everything. I'm just not sure. I was going to say I'm not sure.
Talk about a couple of ones that were sort of amusing and odd ones, like for example, the Sons of Lee Marvin, which was like a jokey secret society for people who looked like the late actor Lee Marvin. If you look like Lee Marvin, you could join the group. So I do talk about some of the more jokey ones, but what they didn't want really was me to sort of go into the issue of, sort of secret societies that were specifically based in the world of fiction. They didn't mind me talking about, the Illuminati, which has popped up in numerous movies and whatever, but they wanted secret societies in the real world, whether they had merit or not.
Well, and I notice you do something on MK Ultra, for example, and we know that was a real event that really took place. You do something on Montauk, which is the idea there was some kind of a secret research laboratory off Long Island in New York, where they were doing some kind of weird experiments and may have been involved in time travel. So you get into a lot of different things like that, not only which things that are sort of fringy, but also things that are accurate. So you provide an awful lot of information that way, I think.
Well, I try, to sort of vary the stories and the societies. You don't just want to hear time and time again about groups that kind of mirror the Masons. For the sake of the reader, you want to keep it sort of open and entertaining and informative. And that's why, I talk about like everything from Jack Parsons to Adolf Hitler to UFOs and, you name it. I think it's important to demonstrate to people that the term secret society doesn't just mean a bunch of old guys lifting up their trouser leg and, jumping around and performing some ritual. It actually sort of goes far beyond that.
Well, that's, the thing you have to do is try to keep the reader interested and provide some good information for them. And as I say, if you get a chance, take a look at Secret Societies. It says on the back of the book, Secrets, Lies, and Privilege, and I was looking at the wrong place. So Secret Societies. Hey, Nick, thanks an awful lot for taking some time with us tonight. We certainly appreciate your vast knowledge of all these subjects. And I'm hoping people will take a good look at your book. And if you want more information about this, take a look at Nick Redfern, Fortean.blogspot.com. You can learn something more about that. And we will, of course, be talking about this at kevinrandle.blogspot.com, giving you a little bit more information about what was going on there. And take a look at Roswell in the 21st century if you'd like to know where my head is on that specific thing at the moment. It'll give you a good idea of where we are. Next week, we're going to talk to Stan Gordon about the Kecksburg UFO crash and his interest in cryptozoology and that sort of thing. And I think that's going to be somewhat interesting as well. So next week, that's where we'll be. And if you get a chance, as I say, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And thank you for joining us.